Welcome to The Time Capsule, stories from an abandoned and forgotten America with John Plaschel, immortalizing fascinating memories through first-hand stories from those that once occupied America's beautifully abandoned and forgotten structures.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 4 of The Time Capsule. I am John Plaschel, and excited to have you. The first thing I want to let you know is the first episode and the third episode that we did here were specific to St. Emma Military Academy and St. Francis schools. And I can tell you this, that the enthusiasm and the feedback that we've gotten, not just from the alumni from the schools, but from everybody, has been immense. So first of all, I'm very thankful for that. Second of all, it's inspired me to continue on with podcasts on this topic. Specifically today, we're going to continue to elaborate on the experiences of a cadet from St. Emma, and he's going to be a couple years older than Eugene. Eugene Butler was my first guest here on the podcast, class of 1968. He's here visiting us or with us today. How you doing, Eugene? Thanks for coming back. Glad to see you are offering your brother-in-arms some moral support, much like he did for you when you were here for your first episode. So that's great. Glad to have you on board, buddy. But what I've learned since, as I continue to gather more information about this amazing institution, is experiences differ. The more you move forward in time or the more you go back in time, these cadets did not have the same experience. Many of the experiences they had were similar, but not all of them. So one thing that we need to talk about and expound upon is going back to make sure that everybody understands what, in this instance, what time was like pre-1968. So we're gonna go back to the early 1960s and up to 1965 with a dear friend of mine and a true gentleman, Robert Walker.
All right.
How are you today, Bob?
Doing fine, John. How about yourself?
I'm as fine as wine and feeling at the top of my game. I can tell that you are too.
Outstanding. Yes, indeed.
So Bob is from the class of 1965. So that means you entered in 1961 into St. Emma, correct?
I went to Maggie Walker before I went to St. Emma.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I transferred from Maggie Walker and had to go back a grade because ordinarily I would have graduated in 64 if I had stayed at Maggie Walker High School. But by transferring to St. Emma, they went over my transcript, this, that, and the other, and they put me back a grade, which I didn't really appreciate too much at the time.
But you were probably with a whole new group of cadets at that point when you went to St. Emma. So it's not like you were kind of shifted out of your regular friend group at Maggie Walker, correct?
Right. And I still have those same friends at Maggie Walker today. We have breakfast together twice a month. And that's pretty unique that we're still together after all these years.
Yeah, let me offer a little bit of color here in case you guys missed the first episode and why this is so special. St. Emma Military Academy originally was called St. Emma Industrial and Agricultural Institute, and it was the creation of Colonel Edward Morrell and one of the Louise Drexel, one of the Drexel daughters, old Pennsylvania banking money. And they dedicated their life and their immense amount of wealth to the education of both Native and African Americans in the late 1800s. Specifically, St. Emma was founded in 1895 and closed in 1972. So it was open for about 77 years. It was developed as an industrial and agricultural institute for African Americans because that was really the method of education per kind of the Booker T. Washington train of thought for educating and providing for upward mobility of African Americans in the late 1800s. And then ultimately it graduated into a full-on military academy, which today still stands as the exclusive and only African American military academy in the history of America. And what makes this story even more unique and more special is the fact that all of this empowerment and education from of these thousands of African American men occurred on the grounds of a former plantation. So the fact that it was a place of atrocity once upon a time with enslavement, it turned into this beautiful environment of education. And I don't know if you knew this, Bob, but I was running the numbers on this. And again, I'm no mathematician, I can promise you that. But if any cadets are watching this, all of the books state that there were about 10,000 graduates of this institution.
Yeah, yeah.
Run these numbers for me, man. At the peak, I understand there was maybe 90 to 95 cadets per class. Okay, I could be off by a few there.
Right.
But I've, according to my research and that of Jennifer Saunders, the cadets that came towards the end of the tenure of St. Emma in the early 70s, and when you go way back, there were not 95 per class. So my point is, I think that, I don't know if we'll ever know the exact number, but I think you're in much more of an exclusive club of maybe 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 individuals that probably graduated.
I would say about 6,000 myself. I've heard those other numbers, and I said, "Now you got to crunch the numbers a little better than that." Yeah, I would say around 6,000 for 77 years. My graduating class, it was something like 65. And that's including the young ladies.
Wow. Is that right? Okay. Yeah, so those numbers are definitely off. The purpose of sharing that with the audience is the fact that this is much more of an exclusive club. If anyone that walked the halls and graduated from that academy is within a very elite group of men, many of whom are still with us today and in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah.
And still a very tight-knit group.
Yes, indeed.
And it's just a wonderful story. And let me say this. Thank you for allowing me and Jennifer and Fred and the others to enter your universe temporarily. I know that this school is a really important part of your life and integral to your development as a human being. Otherwise, you wouldn't constantly be supporting it like you are now in your 70s. And for you to really share this information with us and talk about your experiences and support us on the tours of the property, come to the studio to do this is very meaningful to us. I want to let you know that we really do appreciate it. Okay.
Well, I certainly appreciate you guys too for, opening this door so that we could let everybody know, put the word out there and try to, save the legacy of our schools,
Which is the ultimate goal. Which is the ultimate goal.
Absolutely.
You ready for some storytelling?
Sure enough. Let's get going.
All right. So here we go. And you can refer to your notes if you want, because I'm probably going to do the same.
Right.
Let's start from the beginning. So I've seen pictures of you as a young man, handsome, teenager, right, doing your thing at Maggie Walker.
Right.
Somehow your life switched gears.
Well, I was in another sphere. I was getting in trouble. I was doing dumb stuff, And one scrape after another, my parents said, "Look, how about this? We got this school out in Powhatan that you're probably going to like, seeing that I like military and whatnot anyway." I always admired my dad and my uncles for their experience in the military, So they took me up to St. Emma, and I looked around and saw the guys in those uniforms and how spiffy they looked, So that was right down my line. So I said, okay, this is for me, But I was on the road towards juvenile delinquency. That was what they said back in the 60s, And so
you weren't a juvenile delinquent, but you were mischievous.
Mischievous. I'd love to have somebody chase me. I do devilment just so I got, that excitement,
Well, down the road, we're going to talk a little bit about that because you were still chased at St. Emma at least once that I know of, but we're going to talk about that down the road. But
absolutely.
And this is a common theme. I know that reasons vary as to how students ended up there. I hear stories about cadets that ended up coming to St. Emma, to get straight, like you, and others whose parents wanted them basically to have a private education. And so there was clearly a mix of that. Everybody's experience, a lot of people say the same thing. Man, when I walked to that thing the first day, I was overwhelmed. I saw
Yeah.
these cadets marching and with precision.
hmm
You know, I wanted a piece of that. Can you tell us a little bit more about specifically what you were feeling that first day? Were you nervous? Were you envious? Or what was that like for you?
I had a lot of anxiety, and I felt a little intimidated and sort of fearful too. But I was still looking forward to this experience. You know, it was something that I really wanted to get into, and I looked up to the guys, although they were about one couple of years older than I, but
hmm
I still looked up to them because a lot of them guys look like grown men.
They do. And
You
like
know,
Eugene says, he came in 4'11", soaking wet with his big afro, and the guys there were 6'2" on the
hmm
football team, and they
right?
looked like they were 25 years old. So you
Yeah,
experienced the same thing?
yeah,
Okay.
sure did. hmm
So initially, a little feeling of intimidation, and probably that happened the whole time as you were a recruit, correct?
As a recruit, yeah, the 3 months from let's say August, September, October, November was when we had the ceremony of you finally making it as a cadet. It's when you get your insignia and the torches on your uniform, and you don't have to walk around with a bald head anymore. Uh, you don't get hazed anymore, too. That's another thing. The upperclassmen like to get on you, and
Right.
just harass you. You know?
Well, that's kind of part of the territory for military
Oh
school.
yeah.
That's just not a
hmm
St. Emma thing, but
Right.
you hear a lot of these stories about, situations that may have occurred behind the chapel
hmm
that were harmless by and large.
Yeah. Things were
Um,
different for a recruit. For 3 months, you have to brace. Bracing meant that you had to put your chin in like this and get wrinkles underneath your chin. You sit at attention, you stand at attention with your thumbs along the seams of your trousers. But the sergeant will walk around and look beside up at your face, and he said, I don't see enough wrinkles under your chin. And he put his finger down at this button and he said, go down here and do it again. So you stretch it, you try to get as many wrinkles under your chin as you can. And after a while, it got to the point you just did it naturally.
right.
You have to square off your corners. In other words, you can't just walk around a corner. If you're a recruit, you have to do a military maneuver, a left face or right face as you're walking, like you're marching. Uh, the parade ground. A recruit can't just walk across the parade ground. You better be running. Then when you get to the sidewalk, you can walk. But if you go and touch that parade ground, somebody's going to say something to you if they see you walking.
So in the early 60s, you could step foot on that parade ground as a recruit. You just better be hustling.
Yes, absolutely.
Or else.
Or else, yep. And the same thing with your meals. You couldn't just sit down and eat a regular meal like everybody else. You had to square off your meals, up and down, a right angle.
That has to be hard. That requires balance, doesn't it?
And you really concentrate on what you're doing.
So what happened if all of a sudden you got, some peas and corn or something and something falls? I mean, you get in trouble for that?
You got a certain time limit to eat.
Okay.
So if something falls, you got to just scrape it up and do the best you can.
Speaking of which, let me ask you this question. Man, I meant to ask Eugene this question.
Mhm.
That's spam.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
hold on, time out. When and again, forgive me because I'm not military or ex-military, but when I think spam, I just think just this untasty, god-awful
Mhm.
mess of a slop that you basically were forced to eat to satisfy your hunger.
Yeah.
But I've been told by many a cadet, they actually look forward to that spam.
Yes, indeed. I've got a package from home, and you get the regular cookies and the cake and everything, but you would request spam. And your parents might put 2 or 3 cans of spam in your care package that they send you. And when it's time to go to the mess hall for breakfast, you're marching and you got your little can of Spam with you, and you give it to the mess sergeant, and he'll take it back there and put it in some hot boiling water for you and get it all nice and hot. You'll go back to your table, and before you can start slicing it, here come the upperclassmen and the officers. They come into your table with a bowl. Give me a slice of that Spam.
So they had the luxury of taking whatever they wanted, huh?
Yeah, well, they would ask you, but eventually, you're going to give it up anyway. They're gonna get their fair share, and you're a very popular guy when you got a package from home.
So was the food in the mess hall, which, by the way, I just learned where that was. I had no idea where the original mess hall was, but now I know.
Mm-hmm.
Was the food in the mess hall that bad? That Spam was that good, or was Spam just tasty and like a delicacy to you?
It was more like a delicacy because what we would do was slice it, and then you'd, like I say, put it in a bowl, and you would add peanut butter and jelly, and take your fork and mash it all up into a spread. And then you spread it on your bread or your toast or whatever, and it was a delicacy, and it stuck with you,
So PBJ and S?
It'd have to be apple jelly, too.
Would you still eat some of that today if you were given it?
I was doing that not long ago in my adult life, and my ex-wife said, "What in the world are you doing?"
Oh,
and I said, "Baby, you just don't know. You don't know. You got to try it yourself. It doesn't sound all that great, but it was very good. It was very good."
You had mentioned something that I meant to ask Eugene about, and I forgot to do it. When you came on board and you saw all these men that look like, you said these cadets that look like men.
Mm-hmm.
As time goes on, Jennifer in particular, as an anthropologic candidate at UVA, who, by the way, is studying St. Emma and St. Francis, she's really trying to unearth the sensorineural part of what you all went through. What did you see every day? How did you feel? Even what did you smell? For example, Roland Hall, what's up, Roland? Great to see you in Myrtle, my friend. Told me he was Father Figaro's adjutant after you. Now, he was probably a freshman when you were a senior if he was in Eugene's class. I don't know if you remember that or not. But he would talk about smelling those Pall Malls, and he knew when Father Figaro was coming in.
Yeah.
So the more we get into this and the more you guys are generous enough to share with us, the better we can understand what you guys felt. What I really want to know, Bob, is when you walked up and over time, was there a cadet or cadets that you ended up really admiring?
There was my first lieutenant when I was in the E Company. He was in charge of the first platoon, and his name was Lou Beatty from Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a swagger about him, and he would always get in front of our platoon and say, "We need discipline, DISCIPLINE." He would always spell it out loud, and that was one of his things. But he could call a cadence for us to be marching to the mess hall or wherever we were marching to. And he had that kind of rhythm to it that make you want to dance, or you just didn't want to stop marching, just keep on going.
Did he have that Detroit Motown motif going on? Because I know he was a Detroit boy, correct?
Yes.
Let me stop there for a second, man, because I got to ask. Do you know what the acronym BMOC stands for? Big Man on Campus.
Oh, okay.
Everybody wants to talk about Lou Beatty. The first thing we need to acknowledge is his successful acting career.
Yes.
So props to him for going on to do that. But every person I talk to from that era always seems to mention him. And I don't know if that's just that he was full of charismatic and he was people are just leaders, right?
Yeah.
So did he take you under his wing at all?
He sort of took me under his wing because he recommended me for Cadet of the Month, and I won Cadet of the Month twice. And that means you get a little decorative ribbon to put on your chest, because of how neat you try to keep your uniform and how you polish your shoes and how you, try to stay creased up.
Right, right.
And so he gave me a couple of steps up by doing that because being cadet of the month led to promotions. And so that helped me out a whole lot.
And you stay in touch with him to this day, correct?
Yes, sure do.
Okay.
And I've got a collection of some of the movies that he's appeared in with Steven Seagal and different, people. That's it. And I've got another buddy that I share that with because when Lou came to Richmond, he helped put on a play to raise money for St. Emma St. Francis. And Ed Davis did the posters for that production. And then when Lou got back to California, he had another project going on. He called Ed Davis here in Richmond to do the posters for that one, because it popped, it hit you when you look at it. And he wanted something like that, again. So, yeah, it's been nice to keep in touch,
So he's just, like I said, he's a name. That's good to know that he was one of the individuals that you admire because that's a name that comes up frequently.
Right, yeah.
When you were, so you've already described to the audience kind of how you were feeling when you arrived at the academy the first day, a little bit intimidated.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure most of the recruits were, but that quickly changed, particularly at Thanksgiving when you got, is it called the torches?
Yes.
You got your torches.
Yes, uh-huh.
Tell me about that day. What was it like on that? So that's the same.
Man.
Is that a parade or what happens then?
Right. Yeah. It's your first parade, your first major parade. You wear your dress uniforms, and your parents and family members get to come and see you perform. And that's a big deal. And well, you got to go through the hell night first. That's the night before. So everybody's either apprehensive, trying to stay out of harm's way. In fact, we had one guy, he was so afraid of Hell Night that he went and hid. And the priest and the officer of the day and a lot of people were looking for him because you got this empty bed in the dormitory and everybody wants to know, where is this guy? They are hunting all over the campus. Well, the next morning, they found out that he had checked into the infirmary. And he had got Father Lachlan to lock him in. That's just how afraid he was, But it was no big deal. It's a whole lot of hype, about what they might do to you, this, that, and the other. The upperclassmen always had something going on, that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did he still get his torches even though he wasn't there for
Hell Night? Yeah, they thought he was AWOL or something like that, but he really wasn't AWOL. He was just apprehensive enough to go in and hide out in the infirmary. Yeah.
So now you got your torches. It's November. You're made, right? Well, you're past the hard part.
As the Qs would say, it's crossed the burning sands. That's what we felt like too.
Okay.
Yeah, crossed the burning sands. We finally made it, and the pressure is off, so to speak.
And I can surmise that you had an incredible sense of relief.
Yes, absolutely.
At this point, are you feeling assimilated now and like, hey, I like this, I made a good decision? Or are you still, like, man, this is a lot. Like, what are you thinking now, November of your freshman year?
I'm thinking that I think I can coast through this now, because we've been through the hard part, We've seen others that couldn't take it and what happened to them, because there were some guys that tried to run away, There were some guys that you could hear them going boo-hoo at night in their bed, because they think they made the wrong decisions, and really want to go home and stuff like that, But most of us stuck it out, and very few ever left,
And Eugene already went through the daily schedule of academia for you, so we don't need to duplicate that. But it's important for the audience to know that cadets of this era left with 3 diplomas,
Yes.
academic, military, and trade, correct?
Yes.
So they were busy and they were challenged, correct?
Yeah.
Sun up to sun down, man, there was barely any time for you to relax. There was a little bit, but talk to us about the academic rigor and your appreciation for trade. And then, if you don't mind, add in for you what trade you chose, and did that vary by year?
Well, the regimentation of barracks life, they kept you busy. We were doing something all day, every day, and it was a good thing because you didn't have a chance to get in trouble. You was always doing something. I chose auto mechanics. I was always intrigued about cars, and I wanted to know more about them. And in fact, I had a collection of little model cars, the little Revell cars that you put together and paint them yourself and do this and that, the other to it. So I took up auto mechanics, and I used it a little bit in my civilian life. But as far as sticking with that, I did not. I ended up going to work in the post office for 40 years.
And retired from there
Right, yeah.
10 years ago, was it?
In 2007.
2007. Okay. Okay.
But the other trades, some of them seemed very appealing because I had other friends that were in tailoring. And
Like
I thought
Eugene.
that was a pretty good trade to have because you always could use those skills, I had another buddy who was in upholstering, and that was something I wish I could do because I got some stuff I need to fix up right now, you know. But some of the guys actually did use their trades, and as far if you go further back, you see how they really depended on the trades that they learned at St. Emma to make their livelihood,
So was it trade one day, academic the next, trade one day, academics the next?
That's exactly what it was. And we have our fatigues and boots and stuff, and we wear green fatigues and march down to the trade department. And then on the days that you had your classes, you would have your either summer uniform or your winter uniform, and you spend the day going to different classes, 3 in the morning and 3 classes in the afternoon. Then you'd have military training and go to dinner. Then after dinner, it would be a study period. And you had a little bit of free time also,
Personally, what did you prefer? Did you have a preference, like when you woke up at 05:55? Was that it?
5:55 in the morning. Yeah.
05:55. Was that a bugle? What
Yes.
bugle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Reveille.
Okay. All right.
At night it would be taps. In the morning it's reveille.
And that's something.
Yeah.
The
The first thing we did was go to chapel. Go to chapel for mass in the morning. I think that lasts about half an hour or something. Then you go to breakfast.
that St. Edward's Chapel is just so beautiful. It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
it's a tragedy that campus, or most of it, was demolished. I can't imagine taking dynamite or a wrecking ball to that thing.
I heard that they took it apart piece by piece and took it to another location someplace that they marked each stone as they took it apart. And I don't know where they moved it to, but it was a shame that they moved it at all because the people in the Powhatan community used to come on campus to attend that church. So it was like they were a part of that parish. So why take that away from them, even if the school closed, So,
I'll tell you, you talk to most people in Powhatan, particularly those that were, parishioners at St. Edward's,
mhm.
and it'll bring a tear to their eye.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
they said they would constantly come on Sundays. They'd look forward
Yeah,
to seeing you guys marching either before or after Mass.
right.
And that was a neat part of their Sunday.
We had a lot of alumni that went through the same thing. They had a tear in their eye when they came back to the campus and saw how everything had been bulldozed and dynamited, and the only thing left was the mansion itself.
So, I think you might have been the one that told me this. Obviously, this doesn't apply to St. Edward's, I don't think, if what you're telling me is true. And this could be new and valuable information, particularly for Jennifer, about that being dismantled and moved.
Right.
My understanding, Claver Hall and maybe even Morrell Hall, they were actually, we're gonna pull up a picture here of Claver Hall being demolished. It took 4 full blasts of dynamite
Right.
to get that thing in a position to where the wrecking ball could take care of the rest. And I know that this image might be hard to see for some of the cadets because Claver Hall was, well, I don't want to say it was central to the campus. It was one of the most beautiful buildings on the campus. You would probably say the water tower was probably central to the campus, right?
It was, but Claver Hall, well, the water tower, the chapel, and Claver Hall were built by cadets. Isn't that something? And that just goes to show you how well constructed Claver Hall was if it took that much dynamite for them to try to blow it up, So the wrecking ball finally did the trick, but
it did, and I think some, if not all of that campus is or that building was shoved over that ravine back there and I've been back there in the winter.
Yeah.
Trying to take Eugene back there in the summertime, but he's not a big fan of ticks and snakes and chiggers and all that stuff. There's a couple things that he don't like. Snakes is one of them. Going to mass at St. Edward's Chapel
me
was
and him
another
are pretty
one.
much the same in that category because I probably outrun him, and so as long as I can stay in front of him, I'm all right.
Well, it's but you know how cool it would be is, they knocked it down here, and we showed you the pictures of the dynamite taking it down. Let's dig it back up and put it back together. Can you imagine that if something like that were to occur?
I tell you, that would be something.
But on that campus, you obviously have, and the purpose of this question is to allow your fellow cadets to reminisce. So visually walk me around the blacktop. Let's start at the New Boys Club, work your way to the Old Boys Club and around, and just a little bit of something about each of them and what you remember coming all the way around Morrell Hall and the PX and such.
The New Boys Club was an open concrete area with columns with lights on the top, and it was the only place where the freshmen could go and smoke cigarettes. It had tables there where you could sit down and play cards or, whatever. And underneath it was built a garage was built into it. And at certain occasions, it served as a bandstand where the band would serenade you, and sitting up on that hill like it was, folks from all around could hear the music, And but the same thing at the Big Boys Club. It was the water tower, but it had sections all around it where you could sit and play cards. It was the only place where the upperclassmen could smoke cigarettes. And oftentimes, you had different groups that would harmonize. And you could hear us singing, especially on a clear night. And that melody, whatever they were singing, you could hear it all the way down the hill and all down through the shop areas and different places. And I was a part of a group called Admirations.
Okay.
We were trying to be like the Temptations or somebody, But we sung a lot of the same songs that the Temptations did and the Four Tops did. And actually, people would stop what they were doing to listen to us. And so we were in a talent show. We had the talent show over at St. Francis, but it was 4 of us, Vernon Bowie, Roy Farrar, Walter Street, and myself. And Walter Street continued singing after he left St. Emma. He went in the Air Force. And next thing you know, he was in Saudi Arabia and Japan and different places singing, starting up groups, and he even continued his career after he got out of the military. So I try to keep in touch with him every now and then. I
Right.
send him an email, but we had a nice little group. If we'd have stuck together, who knows what we could have done.
So, when forgive me for not knowing this, but were recruits allowed in the New Boys Club?
Yes.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but if you've got your torches post November parade, you're still a freshman.
Yeah.
You still had to go to the New Boys Club. If you were a
Exactly.
freshman, that's where you were.
Right. That's where you went.
So,
Yeah.
did you feel your first day, your sophomore year, where you could go? A lot of the cadets would smoke under there too, right? Were you a
Yeah.
smoker?
I wasn't a smoker when I got this to St. Elmo, but after seeing the guys running over there, because we'd have like a 10 or 15-minute break between classes sometimes. And so the guys would be running to the water tower with their cigarette in their hand, ready to light it as soon as they set foot on it. And I said, what is the big deal about these cigarettes? So I had to try it just to see what it was about. The next thing you know, if they didn't smoke the whole cigarette, they would put it out and put it behind their ear so that when the next break came, they could go back and finish smoking the same cigarette.
And this is common, and I don't think anyone really knew what the health hazards were back in the
No.
60s, right? They
No.
sold cigarettes at the PX there,
They
didn't they?
sure did. They sure did. But when you finish smoking a cigarette, you had to field strip it. Field stripping means tear the filter, the paper, and everything apart and throw it away because we don't want cigarette butts laying around anywhere, So
Wow.
that was one of the rules,
So there's the New Boys Club and the Old Boys Club. The Old Boys Club is this beautiful stone tower
Mm-hmm.
that literally was a functional water tower. At one point, I don't know if it was when you were there, but it's my understanding there was, I want to say like a cholera outbreak in the 1920s on campus, and they eventually needed to figure out a way to clean the water, and there I think was a water purification facility there somewhere
Right.
at some point.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
I'm going to show a picture here of what that water tower looked like, and it breaks my heart. I'm assuming cadets built that as well.
Right, yeah. And they had to, I heard they dismantled it. I hope they did and took it someplace else. But there was another water tower identical to it in Rhode Island.
Yes.
And I'd like to go to see that one day. Maybe I will, But next to the water tower was the St. Edward's Chapel. And that, like you said, was a beautiful chapel. Louise Morrell had made many trips to Europe with her sisters, Elizabeth and Catherine, and she had seen a chapel that she wanted to duplicate at Belmead, at St. Emma. So she came back and she got all of the heads of each shop department together and told them what her vision was. And they got the students together and they used the horses and harnesses from down in the shop area and chisels and stuff from right there. The granite, everything came from off of the property itself. And they built that chapel in 1927 and dedicated it to Edward DeVox Morrell.
Her husband.
Mhm.
And they're both founders of the school, I guess. And,
Yeah,
and there wasn't there a plaque dedicating Colonel Morrell at the Old Boys Club too?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Bob brings up a really interesting factual point about the Belmead. Ultimately, before you got there, even
Mhm.
it was its own like little town. I mean, it had its
Right.
own general store. Someone told me there were 40, 50 buildings on this 2,300 acre property. There was a thriving agricultural center.
Yeah.
Clay pits from which they made bricks to be
Mhm.
able to build St. Francis School, which is a mile from there. As a matter of
Mhm.
fact, this is a testament to the craftsmanship that Mother Catherine at the time put into that school, and C.L. Dodd and the other architects is the portion of that school that is collapsing
Yeah.
isn't the original part from 1899.
Right. Yeah, that's the new edition.
It's the new edition from the
Right.
50s.
Yeah.
And that same craftsmanship is exhibited on the St. Emma side in these buildings.
Mhm.
Everything came from the property, not just the stone that was quarried from the property, but all the food, right?
Everything came. The only thing we needed from the outside was salt and pepper. But we had our own street system. We had our own heating plant, refrigeration and ice making, everything, even the residences for the faculty. And they used to call the director of the school the mayor of Belmead because
Wow.
it was like a little self-sufficient town, and everything they needed. We had enough food to feed everybody because, the morale said, hey, if it could support all those slaves, hundreds of slaves, it could just as well support the cadets and the faculty and residences, And they had enough to sell to the community also.
So the story just continues to get much more intriguing. I'm actually learning several things from you that I still didn't know to this day. So thank you for that. And the inside of that chapel, from the pictures that I've seen, I'm going to put a picture up right here of the altar, all of which were found by Jennifer up in Pennsylvania. She came across a bunch of these vintage images as part of her studies.
I
Just
still have a
amazing.
little bench from that
You
chapel.
do?
Right, where you used to kneel all the time. They had the regular long kneeling benches for you to kneel
Yeah.
and pray, but they had the little short ones too. So I've got one of those little short ones at home, and it's a little keepsake.
So let's do this. I want to mention, Bob, it seems like you and Thomas Wyatt, I'm sure there are others, but you are the only two that I know, even though I haven't met Thomas, that really, I'm going to call you the historian of St. Emma alumni. And I know there's probably others.
Yeah.
But you've got a collection of a number of things and that are meaningful to the history of this school that ultimately we're hoping, if we're lucky enough, will be enshrined and kept safe and sound in the Smithsonian Museum. But
Right.
that's a whole different story.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Trying to do. But the other thing you did that I want to make mention of is you wrote a book about St. Emma.
Yes, I did.
Can hold it up to your camera right here if you can show it, and maybe I'll show a picture. See the camera right there?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us the name of the book and what is in it and what inspired you to write it.
Okay. This is the Black Military Academy on the James River by Robert A. Walker Jr. And it is a memoir, and it tells the true story of my experience going to St. Emma. And I tried to do a history also of the founders, their backgrounds, and in the chronological order of things that took place and what year they happened, that it was on the property of a Confederate general, and how it was located down in the deep South, And it was really a labor of love. I tried to take notes. I talked to people that were in the community, talked to other alumni members. I went to the Powhatan County Courthouse and dug up deeds and other information like that. So I felt like it was a story that had to be told. And I felt like I was very fortunate to have graduated from St. Emma. And I think the spirit of that school will live on in my soul forever, I think every alumni member has the responsibility to try to tell what they encountered, the history, the stories, and let people know about what happened on that. It's not only historical to us as alumni, but it's historical to Black history, period,
History period, too.
Yes.
And that's what's so special about having you guys come here in person telling your story. So from Penn, the moment you had the initial inspiration to pursue this creation of this book until the day the first boxes arrived.
hmm
How many years had passed to do that? How many months or years had passed from thought to completion?
Um, let's see. I think I started writing notes back in 2004. Finally got close to completion of the book in 2005. And my first copies I bought and started. Well, I've always been a coin collector and gold and stuff like that. I had to sell some of that stuff so that I could get the book published.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So I've been doing self-publishing, but I think I'm going to have to go up a notch.
Traditional publishing,
Go
maybe.
to traditional publishing, yeah.
If I'm sure we'll probably have some folks in the audience that might be interested in purchasing that.
Right, yeah.
Where should they go? Is there a website that we can put up, or how?
Well, they can put up my email. That's about the only thing right now.
Okay.
And we still have the Black History Museum. I took them a box of books recently, and every now and then I look and there's a couple of checks in the mail or something,
Okay.
I think I should have gone up on the price, but I still keep it low because it's
Keep it
not a
affordable.
pressing issue, So right now it's just $20 a copy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that email, are you comfortable sharing that email, or would
Oh
you?
yeah, no problem.
You can mention it right now, and then I'll have Marna to see if we can't put it up on the screen below us.
Oh yeah, well it's nang67@comcast.net.
You want to spell that?
N as in Nancy, NANG 67. Because that's where I was in 1967. I was in Da Nang in Vietnam.
Military. That's right. You served in the
Right.
military.
So somebody else had Da Nang, so I had to cut it short. Just put Nang 67.
That's on your license plate on your vehicle
Yeah.
too.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Sure.
I know that's an important part of the whole story, so I wanted to mention that. But now we're at Claver Hall. Before you talk about that, how many years did you live in Claver Hall versus the Ag Building or Morrell Hall?
Well, my first year, I was at Morrell Hall. Morrell Hall had the armory where everybody's rifles and stuff was located. It also had the PX, the Post Exchange. It had a recreation area. Upstairs was a dormitory because I was in E Company, so all of E Company lived in the Morrell Hall. And like I said, it had a little recreation area where you could play cards and do whatever. And some of the faculty also lived in Morrell Hall.
Including Father Figaro at one point. Was he living there in the big house and there when you were there?
No, he was over there in the big house, in the administrative building.
So after you left, and this has been substantiated by his commandant, Roland Hall, in 1968, he also had a place in Morrell Hall.
Oh,
Would
okay.
stay there sometimes. So
Yeah.
that's different. He must have exclusively been
Yeah.
in the big house when you were there. Okay.
After that, when I transferred to the band, had to move to Claver Hall. And Claver Hall was 5 floors. The basement floor was locker rooms and showers and toilets and whatnot. But on the ground floor, it was classrooms. And the floors above that were all dormitories. So you had A Company, B Company, C Company. D Company was out at the Ag Building, and E Company was still at Morrell Hall. And so Claver Hall it served a lot of different purposes, but I think it had about 7 or 8 classrooms on that first level.
Okay.
And the students stayed in each classroom, whereas the teachers were the ones that moved around. So there wouldn't be a whole lot of confusion of changing classes and whatnot, classrooms and all that. So as soon as a teacher would walk into that classroom, whoever the upperclassman was or the officer of that classroom, he'd holler, "Attention." And everybody would sit straight and grab the bottom of your seat. And as soon as the teacher came in and was seated or whatever, they would say, "At ease," and then you could go back to doing whatever it was you were doing. But that's how they kept things organized. Less chance for stuff to happen in between classes.
So on an academic day, when after breakfast, whenever your first class would start, you'd stay in that classroom in that seat all day long, and then the teachers would come to you.
Yeah, well, you stay in that classroom for the first period, which lasted about 40 minutes. Then the second class would last about the same time. And then you would have your third class. Then you'd have a break, and then you go to the mess hall for lunch. You come out of your lunch, go back up on campus, you can be in formation. Then you go to your third class, and that'll be the same thing, your third, fourth, and sixth class. Well, no, third and fourth, then you'd have a break, 15 minutes, run to the club and go smoke, whatever you're going to do.
That's awesome.
Then you come back for your last class, and then after that, it was military training.
Okay.
Yeah, we do ROTC classes, and that was your military training and learning the nomenclature of rifles and stuff like that, and how to march and all of that,
Did you pick up on that pretty easily?
Well, no, I'm not going to say it was all that easy. I had a smooth transition, but I do remember some kind of way a rifle butt ended up on my toe.
Behind the chapel?
Yeah. So if you get out of step sometimes, somebody might have something to say to help you get straight, so.
Yeah, and so you were in the band.
Yes.
Eugene was in the band.
Mm-hmm.
He was a freshman when you were a senior. Y'all didn't know each other.
We didn't know each other. Nope.
How is that possible? What instrument?
I
You played
don't know.
the clarinet, Eugene? Did you play the clarinet? And you played the sax, right?
I played alto sax, yep.
You just don't
but
remember
we
each
saw
other?
each other, but we did not communicate. And I don't know why, maybe because seniors didn't hang out with freshmen or something to that effect, or everybody was going in their own directions, different circles, so
Right.
it's ironic.
But we also talk about social circles.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know what those cliques were like.
Yeah.
Detroit had a huge presence at St. Emma and St. Francis in the early 60s.
Yes, it did.
As did New York, I think Philadelphia, D.C. You were fairly unique being local because you're a Richmond boy.
Mm-hmm.
So there probably weren't that many of you in your class.
There were 3 of us from Richmond that hang out pretty regular. That was Earl Wilkins, Clyde Roulette, myself, Walter Street. And the classes below me, there was Walter, B.B. Payton, and Ed Smith. But other than that, Richmond, there was one more guy, David Evans. But other than that, we didn't have a lot of people from Richmond. Same thing over on the girl side.
Yeah. Peggy said there were very few.
Yeah,
from
more
Virginia.
people from Philadelphia, New York. And I remember learning to dance over at the in the old gym. And the Philly boys had a bop, the Philly bop that they were doing, so I tried to learn how to do that, And the guys from New York, they were doing the Latin dances, they were doing sort of like cha-chas and stuff, Tito Puente and some of those other guys. I can't think of their names right now, but that was the thing back in the 60s,
And would you take that lesson and obviously bring it to St. Francis for the
That
dances?
was what it was all about. We would take what we had learned and go over and try to show off our new steps,
So,
I didn't go over that much, but when I did, I wanted to be prepared, I think we had a jukebox in that old gym.
Did you?
I think they did have a jukebox in there because I remember learning to dance there. And I don't think it was I think they did have a jukebox in there. They put a nickel or a dime or something in it.
If any cadets are listening from 61 through 65 and you remember the jukebox, please mention it here in the YouTube videos, or if you've got pictures, even better.
Yeah.
Time for a little humor.
Mm-hmm.
As a teenager, you're always going to be mischievous. I don't care if you're in a military academy or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only imagine what you guys felt like having St. Francis so close by. It's
Yeah.
my understanding that a lot of the cadets, had lady friends
Yes.
from St. Francis. Do you remember the name of your lady friend?
Lordy.
That's okay. If it comes to you, let me know.
Yeah.
But they had these dances on the weekends that would, y'all would commingle and do this thing.
Evelyn McNair.
There you go.
Evelyn McNair, right.
Did you give her your class ring?
No, I bought her a ring, and she said, "Bob, I can't accept this." And I said, "Why not?" She said, we've been going together, but I don't. There's some reason she gave me for not accepting the ring. I don't know what it was, but what happened was my class ring I gave to what I considered my little sister,
Oh.
because we had little sisters, and some of the girls over there, they had what they call little brothers, which were underclassmen. So the young lady that I gave my class ring to, her name was Cynthia, and she was in the class of 68, I think.
Okay.
And she came from Alabama. I remember while I was in Vietnam, I bought her something, a kimono? No, it was a pair of silk pajamas, and it was pink and pretty with little flower designs on it and everything. Well, I just imagine what they must have thought when she got that thing at St. Francis, because all those people are about this tall. Can't no American wear no pajamas from those young ladies in Vietnam, So I imagine they all had a big laugh at St. Francis when she got that package.
Hey, it's a thought that counts.
Yeah.
But it wasn't uncommon for those that were brazen enough to do so, you included, to sneak over to St. Francis, right?
Oh, man, we had what they call a free day. And they told us on a free day, you can go anywhere on campus. You can go down to the river, go fishing or whatever, but don't go to St. Francis. You could have the whole day, do what you want to do. I said, oh, man, this is just outstanding. Well, me and a couple of other guys decided we'd go sneak over to St. Francis.
At night or during the day?
This was during the day.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I had a little portable record player. It was sort of about like a little typewriter in a case, and I had some of the latest records, and that was what we always wanted to do, go over and play out our latest music and show off, and let them know we're on top of things, But we got halfway over to St. Francis, and we see a Jeep go by, and one of the priests is in that Jeep looking around, and he spotted us off into the distance, and we saw that Jeep turn around. So we started running. We turned around too, headed back to our campus, And as we were running, we had to jump over a couple of fences. Well, I got to one fence, I jumped over, and the ground was not as level on that side as it was from the side that I jumped from. And by the time I hit the ground, that record player hit my nose, and I got up, and I was just as dizzy. But I ended up with a scar on my nose, on the bridge of my nose, and when I got back to the campus, I had to go to the infirmary to get stitches.
Hey, what did you say to what did you say to the nurse?
The nurse, what happened to you? I fell down.
Which is true.
Which was true. But they didn't, we often wondered, did they realize who it was that they were chasing, but nobody ever said anything. And we certainly didn't say anything, but
Wow.
that was one hell of a lesson, We'd never tried that again,
I love those stories. When you told me that one, I said, do you still have the scar on your nose to
Still
this day?
got it right to this day.
Isn't that something? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I went off track there a little bit. So we talked about Claver Hall. Morrell Hall I think, all right, I'm going to pull a picture up of you right now with some of your fellow cadets studying.
Hmm.
Is this you on that typewriter?
That's me typing.
Is that in
Yes.
Morale Hall? Is that where that classroom was?
That was in Claver Hall.
That was in Claver Hall.
Right.
Okay.
Hmm.
Do you have, I mean, I don't even know if you even remember some of these other cadets that you're sitting
That was
with.
Earl Wilkins sitting beside me, Walter Street sitting behind me, and a guy named Hauser sitting behind Earl. I can't remember his first name. Hauser. Yeah.
But, and there's a picture here, I love this picture. Y'all just look so dapper. Is that a bugle? Now, it might be hard for the audience to see up close here, but this is you on campus, I believe, with a drum corps, but you've got a bugle in your hand.
Right. Yeah. We had to stand there, and I think it was 2 or 3 of us. We'd always line up in the back of the band, and we would carry the bugles. We didn't never play them. We just carried them for show.
Okay.
And I finally decided that I wanted to play the drums, so I moved over to drums, and I was doing pretty good with that.
Okay.
And I told my parents I wanted them to send my saxophone because during elementary school, I had been going to, sax lessons. So they came and brought my saxophone to me. So my last 2 years at St. Emma, I played sax.
Do you still play sax?
I wish I did. I put it down, I pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. Never did really stick with it after I left school.
Okay.
I went to Virginia State, and I was in the marching band, the ROTC band, the concert band. We did so much traveling and partying that I only stayed at Virginia State a year and a half. So my grades wasn't all that great. And I said, I'm wasting my parents' money. I got 2 sisters coming behind me,
Oh.
So I just dropped out and joined the Marine Corps
Right.
with the intention of being in band. But the band was gone. They were doing a tour in Europe someplace. And so I said, oh, man, I'm just going to join up. So I did. And they signed me to something else. I ended up in supply,
How did St. Emma prepare you for the military?
Well, with all of that military training, I was a natural at boot camp in Paris Island, because I already knew how to march and how to lead, and that was part of your St. Emma training was leadership, And so I don't think there was not many other recruits at Paris Island that had the chance to march the platoon to the mess hall and back to the barracks and stuff like that. But that's what I did, because I was the flag arms bearer. In other words, I carried the flag, but they would let me call the cadence and march the guys.
Okay.
And I used Lou Beatty's cadence because in the Marine Corps, hard, love, right, love, that's
Oh yeah.
dead sounding. But with his, it was just a jump beat. Out left, right, out left, right, left, hey, left. It's kind of like bouncy, So we
Had a little rhythm to
a
it?
little rhythm to it. And they
Okay.
kind of like that,
Speaking of Lou Beatty, I was told, and I think this is true, Lou, if you're listening, you can put in the comments below, he grew up at some point lived across the street from Aretha Franklin's father. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
I think that's true.
He
Not
told me
positive.
some stories about how rough his neighborhood could be, and that his brother Chris and him got out of that neighborhood at a time when they were burying friends and neighbors once a month.
Mm-hmm.
That it got so bad that they would either end up in jail or dead.
Yeah.
So
And unfortunately, I do believe that Aretha Franklin's father was a minister, and if I'm not mistaken, was murdered.
no, he was.
Was he not murdered?
Yeah, he was murdered. Sure was.
I think he was
C.L.
murdered.
Franklin. Someone broke into his house, and he tried to fight back, but he would end up comatose after being shot. And they tried to do what they could for him, but they hired nurses and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's right. He ended up dying from his
And speaking of
somebody
Detroit,
breaking in.
was Barry Gordy's nephew a cadet?
I can't say. I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, moving to the big house.
Yeah.
We're circling our way around campus.
Mm-hmm.
The big house is the Belmead mansion that was built by slaves from the 1840s, a beautiful stone mansion. The architect was a world-renowned architect by the name of A.J. Davis, who partnered with Philip St. George Kock, who was the Confederate general that owned it at the time, and took his life in it. So it's still standing today. It was not demolished. And that was the cornerstone for St. Emma and still stands to this day. But it's not where the cadets wanted to end up, because Father Figaro and the other fathers, that's basically where they lived. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're only going to the big house if you're in trouble, correct?
Most of the time, yeah. You get if you cadet, you didn't want to end up going to the big house for anything, because that meant you done something that you didn't have no business or whatever,
Right. So they called the campus the Rock.
Right.
Was it called the Rock when you were there?
Yeah, I think it got that name because on the north side of the James River, there was the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad.
Mm-hmm.
And the junction was located right across from Belmead. And they called that junction the Rock Castle Junction. And that's where the train stopped, and most of the students would get off that train and have to catch the ferry across the river, mainly because the roads were so bad and we were so deep in the woods that that was the best, easiest way to get to St. Emma or St. Francis. But in later years, they changed the name to the county that it was located in, and so Rock Castle became Powhatan.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why they refer to St. Francis as the castle, and the St. Emma as the Rock, or Belmead on the James.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's take a moment to talk about Father Figaro. So in Eugene's podcast, he was very clear about how much he meant to Eugene and how instrumental he was and influential he was in not just his time at St. Emma as a cadet, but some of the things that Father Figaro taught him, he embraced and now exhibits to this day as an adult in his 70s.
Yeah.
And I think he attributes a lot of what he says is the ability to overcome adversity.
Yes.
To Father Figaro. And I really want you to paint, everybody has different opinions. I'm sure yours is probably equally as positive, but tell us what you thought of Father Figaro as part A of my two-part question.
Well, he passed away in 1999, and he had pastored 3 different churches after he left St. Emma. When he came to St. Emma, he had 2 master's degrees and a PhD. He got another master's degree while he was still at St. Emma. He went to Notre Dame University, But he had a brisk personality and a resonant voice and a total dedication to the Catholic faith which he grew up in. He was from Atlantic City, New Jersey, but his parents came from Trinidad back in 1916, something like that, His father had graduated from a university in England called Edinburgh or something like that. His mother graduated from a university in Britain also. But he believed that real education meant to inspire people to live a more abundant life and to learn all that they could to begin life And he reached out to most of us at a time. We were in the prime of our adolescence, and he was quite a guy. And one thing he always said was for us to always taught us to don't just be standing still. Keep moving. Always try to be doing something positive. And he did that by example himself because he was always positive. Unlike Father O'Rourke, who kind of ruled with an iron fist, Father Figaro was tough and stern, but he did it in his own way. He ruled with a sense of love and compassion. And that's what lingered with the students the most. Wherever he went throughout his career, he would see a need and he would address it right then and there. When he came to St. Emma, he saw the need for an expanded eating facility. So a few months after he got to St. Emma, we had a brand new dining hall. And it was completed and put in a new position. He realized that the rifle team was unable to practice in the winter months. So the next thing you know, he had a new indoor rifle range built, and it was right in a spot where it used to be nothing but a big old deep hole, When another thing he did was the renovation of some of the other buildings, like Colby Hall, that used to be the old mess hall, was turned into 7 classrooms, another office for the prefect's office, and the band room was remodeled and put in that Colby Hall. And like I said, upstairs in Colby Hall was where they would show the movies, But he did renovations of Morrell Hall, Colby Hall, the administrative buildings. They were all painted, air-conditioned, and the library, he made sure that we had more, reference books. And something like close to 5,000 books were added to the library. So he was a doer. He would make sure things were done, and he did the same thing at, he went to, when he left St. Emma, he went to a parish in Ohio. He was at another one in Charleston, South Carolina. And up until the day he passed away, he was in Chicago. But each one of those places he went to, the people said he did a marvelous job. He was referred to as a pint-sized ball of dynamite.
He was pretty
a ball of fire.
He was diminutive, wasn't he?
Right. He was not this tall.
But you ever heard Eugene's imitation of him, by the way? You care to give us your imitation of him?
I wish I could do that.
That's fine.
I've heard Chris Beatty. Chris Beatty does an outstanding imitation of Father Figaro.
It sounds like he was completely dedicated to his craft and dedicated to the cadets.
He was all about guidance and making sure that we were properly developing our minds. And during his first 2 terms at St. Emma, they had something like a 99% placements in college. So that was quite an accomplishment right there.
Here's a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
If Father Figaro was sitting right next to me right now, what would you say to him?
I would say, thank you, sir, for what you have done, the sacrifices that you have made, and the eyes that you have opened up. Father Figaro did a lot of things. I mean, he was really into the civil rights movement, Mm-hmm. He came to St. Emma at a time when we were just like I said, 14, 16, 17 years old, to a school in the deep South that people did not like, because first of all, that it was a Catholic school, and here they are down here in their community trying to teach these black kids. So it was just, you had the Vatican going through problems because of certain priests. You had racial unrest. You had dislike for the military just because of what's going on in Vietnam. And here he is 30 miles away from Richmond down in the in the woods. So
Making a difference.
He made a big difference. He invited Thurgood Marshall to come to St. Emma and speak. And we all sat up there and listened to him, but we didn't realize the significance of Thurgood Marshall at the time and what he had accomplished and whatnot till, after the fact.
Right.
Mhm.
And conversely, if Father Figaro was sitting right here, what do you think what he would say to you? That's a tough question.
I hope he would say, "I'm proud of you, young man,
I'm sure he would.
for what you have accomplished and what you turned out to be."
Yeah.
I hope that's what he would say.
I'm sure he would. Couple other questions I have for you, Bob, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
First question is, a commonality amongst most of the cadets and the young ladies that I have come across is this intense passion for their alma mater, despite the fact that they've been graduated 58, 60, 65 years, still in love with their school. And you
Mhm.
can't say that a lot about most schools. For example, got to meet Greta Gore in Myrtle Beach and was talking to her from the class of 71. And, she wasn't able to graduate from St. Francis because it closed in 1970.
Mm-hmm.
So she would have been 71 if there was a class. And when I asked her how she felt about that, she started tearing up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament to, how so many alumni feel about their experience at the school.
Mm-hmm.
And you've kind of taken it to the next level. And I want to know why. Why?
Well, like I said, when I was writing the book, it was a labor of love. But the story has to be told. And we're not getting any younger. Like you said, the last class was for St. Emma was 1972.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's our responsibility to tell the stories and let the people know about what happened there. And
I think part of the allure of it, if it was still a functioning academy
mhm.
for African American students or just students in general, nowadays, who knows if it would be mixed. It would be different, but the fact that it's no longer and it's no more, it's a distant memory,
Right.
and it's gone down in the historical books from something that was demolished in 1974, and you've got this select group of men that were able to experience its exclusivity and everything on its grounds, makes it that much more kind of mysterious
Yeah.
and historically relevant and unique. And to the non-alumni, that's kind of our mindset is like,
Yeah.
wow, man, this place actually did exist.
It was a melting pot of so
Yeah.
many different personalities,
Yeah.
And when you put all of those in together, it's like you're making something good, like a tossed salad or something, and you put a little bit of this in it, and you put a little bit of that in it, and by the time you stir it all up, you've got something completely different.
Right.
So we carry that with us too. Each alumni member has a little bit of Eugene, a little bit of Bob, a
Yep.
little bit of Peggy, this person, that person.
It's clearly had a profound effect on you to this day, which is great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
What needs to happen, Bob? What needs to happen to carry on the legacy? I know that, we've done some things like these podcasts
Mm-hmm.
and the historical tours, which, by the way, the last one, that was a great crowd, weren't they?
Yeah, that was a nice crowd. We had about 25 or 30 people out there
Yeah.
listening to us, and I'm glad that Sherman was able to be there and join Eugene and I, and people commented on our rapport and how we carried ourselves. While one was speaking, the other two would be like at parade rest.
At parade rest.
And they were very intent and asked some very interesting questions, you know?
Still getting questions to this day.
Yeah.
By the way, Sherman Etheridge, thank you, Sherman, if you're listening, for A, participating in that tour, and B, taking me and Jennifer under your wing at Myrtle Beach. It was because of you that I got a chance to meet so many great alumni down there at that informal reunion. I guess y'all have a formal reunion, an informal reunion, but that was great.
I just got off the phone as we were coming here. Dr. Barbara Shannon Bannister called me to thank me because they celebrated her birthday there, and she was just turned 85.
Right.
And I said, well, here. I gave her a copy of my book, and I gave her a framed picture of St. Francis Bell Tower and stamps. And she was very appreciative. So she called me a few minutes ago to thank me, and I told her to give me her address because I wanted to send her something else, you know. But
What
it was
a
nice occasion.
And we were able to be there during that birthday celebration, and she had this big thing of roses and offered us up champagne. Had I been staying that night, you know, I might have dipped into it.
Right.
But you know what's interesting about her? I mean, another very accomplished lady at her age, a real big shot you know, on the Aurora, Colorado scene. Class of 53.
Yeah.
And she's probably so humble she wouldn't admit it. But, you know, her family members had said what a beautiful voice she has or had. Unfortunately, I didn't feel comfortable asking her to sing. But she, once upon a time, was invited to Philadelphia to sing for Mother Catherine. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine
That's something? My goodness, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she, like I said, she didn't offer that information up. I had to find that out secondhand. But
she told me to come back because they're going to do it again in Myrtle Beach next year, and she said that's going to be an annual thing, and make sure you're there. I said, okay, I'll do the best I can.
I know you will. But what else needs to be done, in your opinion?
Well, Eugene and I have been talking about historical markers. And that is something that we hope we can put out there on Route 60 to let people know that this place existed and that it was a plantation that evolved into 2 schools of higher learning. And that's a project we need to work on first. I have also been trying to get the attention of the National Museum of African American History and Culture in D.C. I've been sending them letters. I've sent them DVDs and pictures. Even sent them a copy of the book. And we just want to get our foot in the door so that if we could get St. Edmund recognized, then maybe we could get St. Francis recognized too. But like I said before, I think it's the responsibility of every alumni to step forward and do what they can to try to let others know, let their grandkids and future generations should know about the existence of these schools and what they meant to us as a people moving up from slavery to higher education, and how important that was. You know?
Such an amazing story and worthy of a documentary and or a film, which is a whole different project that we're in the early phases of. But, you know, this historical marker you're talking about, Eugene might have been the one to tell us that's something that's exclusive to the state of Virginia. And if you don't live in Virginia, you might not know what Bob's talking about, but they've got these, it's a really decorative plaque that basically sits on a heavy rod that highlight the proximity of historical locations.
Exactly.
And they're relatively inexpensive to make, under $2,000. So, you know, the alumni should reach out to you, Bob, if they're interested in potentially.
That's something I was thinking about, that we would need to appeal to the alumni for some support in that area, so that we can get that done. And like you say, a screenplay or a documentary or even a movie. My goodness, that would be just wonderful. Imagine Denzel Washington playing the part of Father Figaro or something like that, you know?
Denzel is my favorite actor in the world, but you know who might make a better Father Figaro? Eugene.
I can hear him laughing over there.
and he's a little more handsome than Denzel.
Oh,
Well,
man.
Bob, this has been really rewarding, and thank you for sharing all of your experiences with us from the 61 to 65 era. We're going to transition now,
Okay.
and the 60s are great, still Father Figaro,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think you would disagree that if we go back prior to 1960, 59 or whatever, now we're in the St. Emma Military Academy era of Father O'Rourke.
O'Rourke. Oh, man.
And he was a different individual than Father Figaro, as most will tell you. But there's a lot of interest on behalf of the public and the cadets to try to better understand what life was like at St. Emma during the 50s.
Yeah, yeah.
And we are fortunate enough to have Pete Jones on the line, class of
Okay.
59. Pete, you're all right with me calling you Pete, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Well, you've got
That's
myself.
fine.
You've got myself and Robert Walker here, and you are patching in remotely to the time capsule, and the topic is St. Emma Military Academy. And the nice thing is, Bob and I just spent about 90 minutes chatting about his experience there in the early 60s under Father Figaro. And what I was telling the audience was the further back you go in time, the more you realize how different things were for the cadets with each incoming class. And I don't think any cadet would argue that the experience under Father O'Rourke and the military academy of the Holy Ghost Fathers in your era was different than that of Bob's. And I'm sure those that preceded you had a much different experience than you did. So with your permission, Peter, I wanted you to introduce yourself. And first of all, can you confirm with me that you were the class of 59 at St. Emma?
Oh, yes.
Class of 59.
Yes.
Well,
That was it.
so glad to have you on board. Why don't you open up with just by introducing yourself and then just tell us a little something about how you ended up at St. Emma.
Okay. Well, my father graduated from St. Emma, so that was kind of a given that all of four of us boys would go there. And I already had three sisters attending St. Francis, so that made life a little interesting when we would go visit them. And my first experience was really my first time of being away from home for any length of time. And at 13 years old, everything was kind of new, halfway exciting, but then you don't know what you're going to turn on the next corner. So I remember being in the office with my father and Father O'Rourke, and I remember part of the conversation, not most of it. But anyway, my dad was paying up for me to be there and everything. And Father O'Rourke seemed very casual, not militaristic like, and so I ended up being taken out by a cadet and shown me where I would be sleeping and where my locker was and all of that, and explaining to me what things would take place and everything. And there was another fellow from my hometown that, well, not my hometown, but the next town over from me, same county. He was also attending as a freshman. I didn't know him that well, but apparently his brother had been there. So we went through all of the little getting the supplies and stuff that we needed, the uniforms and whatnot. And one day he and I had a question, and nobody, we didn't know who to turn to. So we figured we'd go walk into Father O'Rourke's office and ask him. And that's when we encountered, you don't do things like that. You ask permission. And we were both kind of, whoa, this is a new experience. And they used to have a way of, if an upperclassmen were teaching you, if you made a bonehead, in other words, you did something you weren't supposed to, you could get a knee pressed into your buttocks real quick.
Was that only behind the chapel, or did that happen anywhere?
No, that was out on the parade field, openly done.
Okay.
Like, that was, so you soon learn to do things right, and you don't get that boot. They used to call it the boot, and it was a funny thing. I found out years later when they did some x-rays of my hips and everything, I had a fracture along the femur. So that's the only place I could figure that it happened. But, I'm soldiered on, didn't want to be the weakling in the crew. So that was kind of my first couple of experiences at the very beginning. And since my father I had a blacksmith shop at home, and I had tinkered around in there. I wanted to be a blacksmith like my oldest brother, who graduated in 49.
Is that George?
Yep.
Okay.
So it ended up, I had the same teacher that he did, Brother Otto Durbeck. At the time that George was there, he was still in the order, but he had gotten out by the time that I came and was married. So, but I was pleased when I got to visit the shops and everything, and I wanted to learn. Okay? And even going over to the girls' school, the senior girls would teach us how to dance. Although I had 3 sisters above me, dancing was not one of those things that a young teenager was all that interested in. So I did my best to learn to dance, and they even had a basic step, the Belmedian hop, they call it, to teach you that. And, then learning to stay in cadence while we were marching and everything, it was pretty good. And apparently word got out that Jones' brother is at school, so we're going to get some decent haircuts, because we grew up in a barber shop learning to cut hair. And so the fella that was more or less the chief barber at the time was kind of a self-taught fella. He had some makeshift clippers and whatnot, and he found out that I was there and had good professional style clippers and all, and knew how to cut hair. Being just a cadet like myself, he sent for me, so I didn't know. I grabbed my stuff and go running, only to find out after a day or two of doing that on my free time, I was called in to see Father O'Rourke again. You don't do anything around here unless you have permission. Excuse me. I mean, so I learned the hard way, and then I just, waited until after Thanksgiving was the big thing at the
Oh,
time.
parade.
Captain Johnson was professor of military science and tactics at the time. So once you passed all of the basic training that they were putting on you, learning to march, how to hold your rifle, and that kind of stuff, you got the torches. They were little discs that you put on your uniform at a specific place, and they were called. You passed it because now you were authorized to wear torches on your uniform. Well, hey, I'm impressed. That was something new and different. So, being a freshman, a 13-year-old, I wanted to try out for football. So they would let us go out there, and the upperclassmen viewed it as fresh meat. So they would whip us around and everything. We were like the dummy squad when they were practicing. And fellow Malinowski had taken over to coach football and basketball. Well, he'd taken over all of the sports and everything. So he saw how I was being bullied and pushed around and beat up and everything. We didn't have that great of equipment for the freshman squad, so he stopped that and pulled me out, and so fine. That football season seemed to be over no sooner than we were getting the hang of it, and so then I concentrated on cutting hair. It was quite a chore to give everybody a haircut, and then when word got out that he giving decent haircuts, I was sorted out to give haircuts. In the meantime, I had learned to weld pretty damn good my freshman year. Otto was showing me, and then how to weld and everything, and it was strange because by my senior year, the girls' school had a real old big boiler to heat that whole building, that whole complex. And periodically those tubes would leak. And first couple of times during my 4 years there, Otto took me over, and once I got a driver's license, I was sent over to weld those tubes, stop that boiler from leaking. And for me, that was a hell of an honor. I had something to boast about because I used Otto's truck to go over to the girls' school and weld me the boiler so that they could keep heating with it. In the meantime, I had worked myself up and was doing pretty good with the rest of the cadets. I mean, we really had a nice group that shared experiences and just seemed to click together. That's something I never had in my hometown, so that was a good feeling. And then just being around O'Rourke, we soon learned that was he had a nickname for him, Little Caesar.
Was he a small guy too? Was he small?
Very small.
Like Father
Figaro. I doubt if he was tall as Father Figaro. My sister has some pictures. I was going to try and get her in on this, but God, she graduated in '54 from the girls' school. So, and my baby sister, she has a lot that she wants to share with you also.
Well,
but there was a picture of my sister, and my sister is about 5 feet 2 or 3 inches, I guess, close estimate. And her senior year, the battalion commander and her had a little fling going, and so they used to have a thing where the young ladies would be represented of a company or battalion staff or what have you, and it was usually the choice of the person in charge, and it was quite an honor to have the young ladies with us for a day or so. Anyway, there was a picture with my sister, Papa O'Rourke, and the fellow that was battalion commander, and seeing the three of them there, Father O'Rourke was shorter than my sister.
Well, let me
So
ask.
I put him around 5 feet, 5'1", and he enjoyed his cigars.
Like
And
Father,
he had a way of taking that cigar out of his mouth and looking at you with such a frown, just disapproving like, and I just found that he's not a likable person. But then since then I have realized that what job he had to perform and do and everything, because we used to get carried away and trying different things and whatnot. And he was the one that had to discipline everybody.
and it sounds like Father O'Rourke, apart from being a white Irishman, versus Father Figaro, who was African American as well, just different, right? It doesn't seem, and no disrespect to him, that maybe there was a division between him and the cadets, if I'm hearing you correctly. Is that
Oh
accurate?
yeah, it was one incident, and I've told my sisters about it. My first year there used to be a building called the old gymnasium that was no longer being used. And under the gymnasium, we had the rifle range and the laundry for all of the cadets and everything. So the old building was being used for gardening and things. So we had permission to have a pep rally before a football game. Well, you get a bunch of greenhorns in there and in a gymnasium. What is a pep rally, You don't know. So you cheer the team on. Well, is it going to be an organized thing or an individual thing? Nobody said anything or tried to organize it. So everybody was jumping around screaming and shouting, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And O'Rourke walked in, and anytime a priest or a higher up person walked in, command at ease was given. And you stopped what you were doing, you stopped in your tracks, you didn't speak of anything. And I never forget it. O'Rourke said, bango, 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 the next boat to Africa. And for some odd reason, that stuck with me throughout the whole time I was there. And, it was such a distance. You were, he had a way you had to pay attention to, and he was commanding respect and everything. And I think he had a complex about being so short.
Interesting.
Okay?
That's
now that I look back, okay? But while I was there, the only thing that I could think of was keep my butt out of trouble.
yeah. Sounds a little different than the Father Figaro days for sure. A couple other questions. Was Father Figaro there your senior year, or was O'Rourke there all the way through 59? So O'Rourke finished in 57, 58, somewhere around there?
Well, 59, they made the change Father Figaro was there for 1 year
Mm.
with O'Rourke, I guess, to pick up all of the things. Okay, this is how we do things here. You know, he was not thrown into it cold. And right away, I was cutting his hair often. And I even went back after I graduated to talk with him to see what he thought I should pursue in life. Okay? And I was usually on a Sunday, so I would visit, and after the cadets were doing their thing, he and I would be walking from different buildings and whatnot and talking, and that I developed a high respect for the man, because you think about it now, John. Back then, 58, 59, 57, how many counselors did they have at schools like this?
Mm.
How many people did they say, okay, this particular cadet, he excels in the trade area, so what should we be pushing him to do after he finished school here? We didn't have that. So that's why I pleaded with my father, let me go talk to Father Figaro. He wanted me to go into business administration. He got to know me my last year there and whatnot, and that's what his recommendation was.
So,
you know,
did you notice a distinct difference between the two personalities then? Because you were there during that transition year, your senior year, where you got to experience O'Rourke and Father Figaro, two different like authoritarians,
Yeah.
correct?
Exactly. Well, with Father Figaro, I kind of sensed that he was there to take over from O'Rourke.
Right.
I don't know why. I just had that feeling. Once while I was visiting to talk with him, I even brought that up. I said I had that feeling, and I just knew that you were going to take over from Father O'Rourke. And I don't know, Bob, I don't know if Father Schreier was still there when you went. He was
I
German,
don't remember that name. I don't remember Father
He
Fryer.
taught mathematics, had a Henry Kissinger style accent, very heavy German accent. And he was like a prefect. He and Father Pergo. Father Pergo, he was about 6'3", 6'4", and heavy into science. I mean, he knew his stuff. He took a bunch of us on a trail, not a trail, but a hike to see part of the estate and everything. And he even had a sense of humor. And most of the time you saw him, he was very stern, and you wouldn't think of him as having a sense of humor. And he spotted something on the ground, and he acted like it was a real rare find or something. And we had this one fella in my class, George Johnson, and his middle initial was Eve. I think George Edward Johnson. Anyway, we nicknamed him GE because he was not that swift. Good mechanic, but not that academically inclined. So I would act like it was something real special. George had nothing better to do to go and pick up that rock and looking at it. And Father Pergo said, "It's bird dropping, you dodo." So, I remember those type of incidents. And And it was, that showed me that Father Pergo, although it was very serious, he had a human side to himself. And that was, it's amazing because other than that, all we had were the upperclassmen. We looked up to them. And to say that we model ourselves after them, I don't know. We may have. We were heavily influenced by the upperclassmen. And when we became upperclassmen, I guess we did the same thing. So,
quick and easy questions here, just basically a yes and no answer that I think some of the younger cadets would like to know. Number one, when you were there, was the mansion called the Big House or not?
Yes.
Okay. Number two, was that bandstand across from the Big House called the New Boys Club, and is that where freshmen smoked?
No.
Oh, what was that used
that
for?
It used to for bandstanding.
Oh.
I don't know if you've seen any of the old pictures, but there used to be an old building where Morrell Hall went up. It was called the ROTC building, and that was between the mess hall and the other in the corner of the campus. In between was a small group of benches, and that was called the Freshman's Club.
Did you know that, Bob?
No, I didn't.
Wow. So was the water tower a place where upperclassmen would congregate when you were there?
Yes.
Pete? And would you smoke cigarettes there?
My last year I did.
Okay. Was Morrell Hall there ever? I know it came later, but was it built in 59 or where was it?
Yeah, that's when they got started because I wanted to, in 58, the summer of 58, I wanted, or maybe it was 57, I don't remember the exact year. I wanted to stay and work because there was a lot of steel going in, and I just wanted to stay there and work. And, at the time, my father had quite a few of us in boarding school because my baby brother was right behind me, 2 years behind me. And my baby sister was 1 year ahead of me. So, I was raised to work and to earn. So it was something that they wouldn't, I guess it was the laws at the time. Although my skills as a welder, I was like some of my classmates when they found out that I'm growing orchids and bonsai trees, they looked there. That dude was the best welder in school.
That's your specialty now, isn't it? Bonsai trees?
Yeah, well, he said he can weld overhead and pipe and everything. I mean, stuff that was difficult. Okay?
Yep.
Like you got a pipe, overhead pipe, and you got to make that circle all around to seal that sucker up with welding, and I was good at that kind of stuff. I saw all of that as a challenge, and I had learned to do well.
Were there cliques there? Was there such thing as the New York crew, the Philadelphia crew, the DC crew, all that stuff? Did cadets hang with?
Yeah, well, we knew where each person was from, but it was not a clique per se, that like a gang,
Right.
I mean, we were all cadets, and we stuck together, okay? And we didn't have anything like cliques or you're not part of this group because you're not from Detroit, or we didn't have that.
there's much more widespread camaraderie amongst the cadets, correct?
You got that right. Yes.
So listen to this. I have several other questions I want to ask you, but what I think I'm going to do here in an effort to compare and contrast is, and this is going to be a surprise to the audience listening. So obviously we had Bob here from the class of 65, Pete, who we're talking to now, from the class of 59. Before the Fathers of the Holy Ghost assumed the administration, I believe in the late 40s, if I'm not mistaken. 1947.
Yeah.
Bob, you might know this. Do you know who was in charge prior to that, before the Fathers of the Holy Ghost and Father O'Rourke?
The Benedictines.
Yep.
And before that, the lay professors.
Yep.
But before them, it was the Christian Brothers.
And the Christian Brothers, right.
Yeah.
So we are so very lucky to have made connection with some of your fellow cadets from the era of the 40s. Now, we're talking about going back to the Benedictine Fathers. Thanks largely to you and your kind invitation to Myrtle Beach. They gave me and Jennifer about 4 hours. Plater Campbell, class of 46. What a gentleman. His wife, Faye. How you doing, Faye? You guys cracked me up. I mean, we sat in that room and busted out laughing like nothing. Tarika from the class of 57. And a gentleman by the name of Stafford Tolliver.
Yeah.
Stafford is the class of 47. And we are just blessed. I feel like having the three of you here, I feel like I just unearthed a treasure. It's like I found gold.
Yeah.
And Stafford comes from an era well before you, he graduated 12 years before you. And he is with his adult daughter, Deborah, who I have had many conversations with. She's as sweet as she can be, and also very passionate about learning more about St. Emma. And they are patching in as we speak to answer some questions. Now, I still have questions for you, Pete. So what I want to do is maybe, first of all, make sure we got Stafford on the phone, and then maybe alternate. So we're not talking over each other. I want to make sure I'm going to direct questions towards each of you with your permission. Is that okay?
That's fine with me.
Okay. Let's see if Stafford's on with us. Stafford, Mr. Tolliver, are you with us?
Yeah, hello?
Stafford. Stafford Tolliver, are you with us?
Yeah, good to hear from you.
Likewise.
My daughter's been in contact with, she's been in contact with you, but I haven't heard your voice since we were down in Myrtle Beach.
Well, I cannot tell you what an honor it was to spend close to 4 hours with you and Plater and Faye and Tarika, and Sherman for that matter. What a complete honor when you prepared a 2-page letter to share with Jennifer and myself about your experience at St. Emma. My heart skipped a beat because the information was amazing, and it was the first time I had met anyone from the institution from the 40s. And B, the fact that you went to such great lengths to prepare that for two total strangers is a testament to your commitment and passion to your alma mater. And I want to thank you for that, first of all. Number two, I want to let you know that I do have Pete Jones from the class of 59 patched in on the phone with us, and Robert Walker, who I believe you know, is here in the studio with us. So you are with in the company of two other cadets, and Eugene Butler is watching. He's a class of 68. So there's technically 4 of you here. So do we have a good connection here, Stafford? Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you very well.
Okay.
Do you want me to start? You want me to start now or what?
Yeah, what I'd like to do, Stafford, is I'm going to ask you a question or two first of all, and then when we're done concluding with that, I'm going to ask George a question as well. So we're gonna start with you, Stafford, and first of all, I want to thank your daughter Deborah for everything that she has done to help me and facilitate this and share some precious images of your time at St. Emma in the 40s with us. So if she can hear us, thank you, Deborah. But more, what our goal is here today is to learn the differences of what happened on the campuses through different generations, and I think it's going to become evident that your experience at St. Emma is much different, or was much different than that of Pete and Bob and Eugene. And those are some of the things we'd like to find out. This is a really casual podcast. So we just want to learn a little bit about you and your experience. So allow me, Stafford, to open up with the first question, which is just understanding a little bit about yourself and your path to St. Emma. Would you share with the audience where you're from and how you ended up at the academy, please?
Well, first of all, I'd like to start off by saying my name is Stafford Isaiah Tolliver, and everyone now called me Stafford. When I got married at the academy, I was known as Isaiah.
Okay.
When I got married, my wife really didn't like Stafford Isaiah at all. So, and my close friends always called me Stafford, but at the school I was always Isaiah Tolliver. All my records and things says Isaiah Tolliver, and now they say Stafford Isaiah. So I'm the same person,
Okay.
I was born in King George, Virginia. So, in fact, a little tidbit story, and we wanted to name my first son after me as a junior, but she said, no way, So his name is Stafford Darrell Tolliver, and everyone called him Darrell. So I guess what records will show that the name really doesn't change you one way or the other. But I'm still the same person. I was born in King George, Virginia, in September 6, 1927. And goes back, my father and mother died at a very young age. My father was very energetic. He was a builder in that community, a carpenter, build houses and what have you. And my mother died at childbirth of my sister. I don't want to dwell on that too much, because sometimes it brings back too many memories of back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to say everything back in those days was segregated, and I had a good upbringing because my aunt Edna had no children, and she was an educated person, educated at Howard University, and she wanted me to come live with her, and I was just a young kid then, just 12 years old, but and so that was an easy call for me to come to Washington, D.C. to live with her. And naturally, it was mid-year, and I entered elementary school at Charles Young in Northeast Washington, D.C., and then to Brown Junior High School. And really, it was a great place to be. But although my stay in Virginia was good, because my father was in World War One, and by him having the skills that he had, he was able to have a decent living for all of us. And so most people back in those days didn't even have a car, but we had a car where a doctor could come from his office to our house. He didn't have to even go to the doctor. Doctors back in those days made house calls,
Mm-hmm.
and because we had a car to go to church and whatever we wanted to do, and only very few people were fortunate enough to do that, and that was from hard work and on his part. So, and everyone realized how hard he had worked to take care of his family. So it was an easy call for his brothers and sisters to take care of us after he passed. I don't necessarily want to dwell on that so much, but to get to St. Emma, my aunt played bridge with the camel, with Flossie Camel. That's Plato's mother. And he was already at the academy. He went there in 1942. And she thought that maybe I'm at home. It might be a good idea for you to go to St. Emma, because I had expressed interest in military training anyway, and asked about St. John, and there were no military schools for and we were called then, for colored people, and I don't know what we were trained so many times. You were colored, then you were a Negro, and of course now I guess you're black or something like that. But anyway, like my name and everything, we're the same person. So life takes many changes, and hopefully I said yes. It really wasn't a hard call, because I could adjust to most anything. And you asked about the first day or second day, whatever was required, I was fortunate enough to adjust to the situation, and I adjust to the situation very, very well, and wasn't any problems. So they left me there and at the school, and then at some point here I can go into my time starting there.
Well, that's very valuable information.
There.
So you were orphaned at an early age, and there was a family member, a friend that had some connection to St. Emma, and it seemed like a logical fit for you. Now, Stafford, is it true that when you started there, you started actually in the 8th grade at St. Emma? Did St. Emma offer an 8th? Okay, so you weren't there in the 8th grade. Okay, you started in the 9th grade.
I went there in the 8th grade.
Oh, so
I went there in the 8th grade.
So that's something that's different.
They had an 8th grade. They had an 8th grade program there. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
so
I had spent a year at Brown Junior High School, and now they even call that the middle school or something. But when I came along, it was a junior high school.
Wow.
So and I think that was the first year that the end of like St. John's here. That was the first year that they had started in the 8th grade.
I'm going to put a picture up here of you for the crowd to see in full uniform. I was telling your daughter, I'm not sure if this is 8th grade or 9th grade or when it was. But man, you wore your uniform well. My observation of you when I met you is you are a very well-dressed man, and always have been, as you can tell by this picture of you from the 40s in St. Emma. And I just love this picture. So thank you for sending it over, Deborah. I want to switch over to George. I'm sorry, George. I want to switch over to Pete for a second. Pete, do you have a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Pete,
yeah.
Have you all met each other? Pete and Stafford?
No, not physically. I talked to his daughter this morning, and I'm going to get my oldest brother to get in touch with him, because I believe they were there at the same time.
Yes. He was class of 40.
George Francis Jones.
Yep.
I was there with George Francis Jones.
Yeah, that's my cousin.
Oh, that's awesome. That is so awesome.
It is something.
So Pete, if I can ask you this question, so you entered St. Emma for different reasons. You had a family lineage of St. Emma and St. Francis brothers and sisters and other relatives that may have gone there, correct? So it was kind of not an option for you. Is that correct? Is that how you ended up at St. Emma?
Yes, that's pretty much. Other words, here, fill out this application. Now, go get Miss So-and-so to sign it for you. So fine, you know. I mean, when you're 12 and 13 years old, you don't have any idea what you're going to have to do and whatnot.
Right.
So I did, and then you got to pack up your clothes, and you got to do this, and you got to have all of your clothes marked and whatnot. So, like I say, it was an experience, and I've often said I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I would love to see every young man get some discipline in them, and like a few times there were fights there between two individuals, and at the time we were there, the chapel from the bandstand down to Peter Claver Hall was a nice stretch, and if you got caught fighting and were written up for it, that's 15 hours of your time that you would have to do what we call punishment tours.
PTs.
Other words, other words, you walk back and forth. Usually it was no more than 2 to 3 hours at a time, but you would march under cadence with a rifle, an M1 rifle, on your shoulder, and that was your punishment tour.
So Pete, would you have to do the same thing? And this is a question for Stafford as well. Let me start with Pete. Bob and Eugene, when they were in trouble, they had to hold that rifle over their heads and count the stones on the St. Edward Chapel. Was that part of your punishment? Did you ever have to do that, or was that something that came in the 60s?
That's something sounds like from the 60s. We had to put down shoe level. In other words, you marched. And periodically you would be given a command to switch from right shoulder to left shoulder and whatnot. But you marched under cadence. In other words, like you would see soldiers in a parade, that's what you did for 1 hour or 2 hours or 3, depending on when you started marching and how many hours you had to give up.
Okay. Now, Stafford, I've got a question for you. And then I'm going to ask the same to Pete afterwards. And I know we're going back, I think, to 1943 was the year you entered the academy. Is that correct, Stafford?
That's correct. That's
okay.
Correct.
To the best of your recollection, can you share with us what that felt like for you? Do you vividly recall that day? I know I'm going way back on you, and it's fine if you don't, but if you do, it would be nice to know what you were seeing, what you were feeling. Were you nervous? Were you excited? Were you intimidated? Do you recall that day, Stafford? And then when you're done chatting, I'm gonna circle back to Pete and ask him the same question. Go ahead, Stafford.
Not really, not intimidated. I would slightly recall, my first day there. To me, it was just another trip to a school. It wasn't a big deal because I knew from the beginning whatever they expected of me, I would perform accordingly. And so it really wasn't a big deal if if they want me to whatever required, because I had prepared myself before time that I was going to obey all the rules and regulations of the institution. I read the book of what is expected of you. So it really wasn't a big deal for me to change a little and into the school.
Okay. So you assimilated pretty easily then, right? It wasn't a big adjustment for you. Is that correct, Stafford? It was a pretty easy assimilation?
Of course not.
Okay. Go ahead,
said
Stafford.
nothing today is a big adjustment for me. I can adjust to whatever necessary to adjust to. I was brought up that way, and it's hard to come from a good sized family and not do what's required of you to do. All you have to do is do what you're told to do, and everything will be fine.
Gotcha.
I learned that from a very young age, and you don't question the people who give you the order. Just do what you're told to do, and you'll be fine.
Go ahead. Bob has something to comment. Go ahead, Bob.
Right. Yeah. Well, we all had the cadet handbook. The cadet handbook was about 20 pages of rules and regulations and do's and don'ts. And so each cadet had a copy of this, and it kind of outlined how you would live on campus, the do's and don'ts of, cadet life.
You needed to know that front and back, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Let me circle back to Pete here. Pete, can you expound a little bit more on what you were feeling your first day at the academy?
Well, it was a new experience meeting people from different parts of the country, different states and whatnot. And we formed bonds very quickly. I'll never forget one of the fellows that was in my class. We are still in touch this day, although we had about a 50-year pause in between us after we graduated. But we formed a bond, and we check on each other every day, or every week, I should say. And I wished I could find more of the old classmates so that we could all get together one day.
Do you stay in touch with any of them, Pete, at all?
Yeah, well, this one fella, Earl Jones, he lives over in Maryland, and he's had a kind of a few medical issues. He was in a diabetic coma for about 5 days years ago, but we still get in touch. We reminisce. We play football together.
Nice.
And, like in August, I call him and say, all right, get your stuff together. We're going to get out on the field, because we would go back early from sophomore year, junior year, and senior year to start getting in shape for football.
Right.
So we laugh and joke about that a lot, and another fella that I get in touch with for free sometime is Prentice. Now, we knew him as Prentice Lindsay, but when he joined the Army and they looked at his birth certificate, they said, fella, you are Prentice Step. So we never knew that, and but he's living in Italy now, and we all three of us were in what the old shop called Iron Works, okay? And we all had blacksmith experience, welding and whatnot, and we all laugh and joke about what we did and what we didn't do. And as a matter of fact, you had mentioned earlier, you saw a picture where we were out on the dam swimming. We were all altar boys, all three of us. So, I sent him a copy of that picture, and his son and daughters and whatnot didn't believe he was the same individual.
Wow.
He was thin as a rail, and now he's expanded quite well.
Oh, yes. Nice choice of words. So Stafford, the audience wants to know, this will help me better understand, and this is probably something that you may not know because it's probably something you weren't really paying attention to, but you entered St. Emma in 1943. Was it already named the St. Emma Military Academy, or was it still the St. Emma Industrial and Agricultural Institute? Does that ring a bell?
No,
Okay.
no. At the time when I entered, it was St. Emma's Military Academy. In fact, I have a booklet to show that was St. Emma. Debbie can show you a picture of it. It's St. Emma's Military Academy, and a booklet catalog is 45 and 47. Things were different because I came in under the Benedictine preach,
Right.
and we were called. We were only like 100 strong, so our class was only maybe 25 at the most, and we were told what to expect at the institution and what they wanted us to do. Now, I can see it from both sides. The Holy Ghost priest came in 1947, and I was in school a year under them. So I have a look at both sides of the thing. And we had Father Frederick and Father Dennis, where they were the head of St. Emma, and the headmaster was Father Benno. He was the headmaster at that particular time, and it was no nonsense at the school. And they laid out each thing they expect of you, and if you follow the rules and regulations, you had no problem. But to cross any of those rules and regulations, we were slightly light on punishment, but heavy on discipline. If you can't follow the rules and regulations, then you'll be gone. I can also recall I was a lieutenant on my junior year, and I was only an officer on my junior year. And I remember the dean had called me into his office and wanted to know what happens to these kids. Some of them want to go back home. They came to my office crying, and they missed their parents and everything. And he asked me, "What in the world? How you think I should handle this? You know, I just want your opinion." I said, "My opinion is, if they want to go home, you let them go home. That was the rule of the thing. We weren't running a nursery school." So he said, maybe you as the officer should have left with the other class of 47, and because you're gonna be some changes, and you can dismiss yourself, and I'm sure I will see you on campus in West Nam. And we did, but that was the understanding that I'm a no-nonsense guy. We don't have no second and third chance. You have one chance and one chance only, and that's it.
That makes sense. And Pete, it sounds like with the Benedictine Fathers, according to Stafford, I mean, it's just discipline, right? I mean, one chance and one chance only. Even though Father Figaro was of the same mindset, it sounds like perhaps he had made some exceptions to the rules in certain cases. But in your tenure there, was it that strict as you're hearing from Stafford, where it was one chance and one chance?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Oh, yes. We used to have, the class of 59, when we went in as freshmen, it was the first time that they had an A and a B freshman class, okay? Because we were up about 59, 60 cadets. And I never forget the first experience where they had us in formation and two cadets had rifles, and they were standing up near the battalion commander, and they read out the orders of the day, and where cadets were being dismissed, and seeing the signatures being taken off the uniform, and then the battalion marched over that after they were, they called them out, and they had to go stand between those fellas with the rifles, and then they marched them over to the dean's office, and after that, the battalion was marched across those insignatures to say this is a disgrace.
Yep, that's exactly what they did.
Yep.
They would read out a special order for that day.
Yep.
And they say general disregard for the rules and regulations of the academy and for general lack of cooperation throughout the entire year, refusing to obey orders. The following named cadet is hereby dishonorably discharged from the academy effective immediately. And it will be signed by Father Figaro and the battle group staff. And
wow. Stafford, if I may ask you a question just to better understand how your experience differed from what we're hearing from the other two. The mansion there on campus is central to a lot of things, particularly at St. Emma. What did you call the mansion when you were there in the 40s? Was it the big house back then or no?
Well, I've heard so many names, the big house, the rock, and all those things from Rock Council. But I guess the rock was the thing. It was called more than anything else. Old Bill Meade and everyone will know St. Emma as Rock Council. Oh yeah, I really hear. I know Rock Council. I know some of my brothers or friends end up going there, but I really don't think that what we dwell on name so much as far as the military council go. But our classes were very, very small, and we had the priests in all the classes. We didn't have any lay teachers except for we had lay teachers and brothers in the shop, but not in our classroom. They all were priests in the classroom, and you can lose a lot by having people coming and going.
Right. So it's my understanding, Bob, you and Eugene were up at 05:55. I think if I asked these gentlemen when they got up, they were a half hour into their day back then. It's my understanding they started at 05:25. Is that correct, Pete?
Yep, you got it right.
05:25.
And at quarter to 6, we were marching into chapel.
Yep.
Okay.
For mass at the first thing in the morning. Yep.
While you were there, did the priests wear military uniforms?
Yes.
No.
Oh, wow. We got one yes and one no. Stafford, no. And Pete, yes.
Yeah.
And they told me.
The answer is no.
They
wore their habit.
And that's something.
Okay.
Well, they were, during our time, all the priests wore military uniforms except as they were doing, mass or something church related. And all the priests were lieutenant colonels. And they all had the same rank. And I guess that was to be kept in standings with the cadets. But I just wanted to ask that question.
Now we know. And speaking of questions, go ahead. I'm sorry, Pete. Were you saying something?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to ask, this is a question I'm going to start with Stafford, and then I'm going to ask Pete, because we know what Bob's experience was on this one. St. Francis. Obviously, that school was integral to the experience of so many cadets. And I get the feeling that commingling was different for different generations. So like Bob and Eugene would march on the weekends as as an option to go dance in the Quonset hut next to St. Francis. And as an alternative, they were allowed to stay back and watch a movie if they wanted to. So I'm going to let me start with Pete and ask you first, and then I'll ask Stafford what your experience was like in the late 50s with the ladies from St. Francis. Is it true? Did you have your dances? Would you march over there to dance in the Quonset hut, or were you of the era where most of the dances took place inside St. Francis itself, I believe in the Fiesta Hall?
Yeah, well, we danced in the hall. I only remember one incident in the Quonset hut, and what had happened, it got so noisy, okay, with the music and people talking and everything, and one of the nuns just got almost like hysterical, and I'll never forget it. I was right. I said, "OD, move them out."
So it was mostly in the dining hall, but was it weekly for you, Pete? Were you going to St. Francis weekly?
Friday evenings, you marched over. It was exactly 1 mile and 3/10. We marched over. Well, after we crossed the little creek, the bridge that got wiped out, we were not under Cadians, but we were not walking like a mob, okay? We stayed in some slight formation, but we got there to the girls' school, and we danced for an hour, and then we came back home.
Gotcha. And Stafford, did the same experience occur with you when it came to mingling with the ladies from St. Francis?
Yes, we danced in the auditorium. We had, that's the only place that in my recollection, that the cadets were allowed to attend. Yeah.
And I've got some
allowed
pictures.
to go for that.
Did you know your daughter sent me some pictures of that you had in your own stash of pictures of some of those dances here when you would go over, quite good looking couples there dancing away. So Bob, that looks like that was a little bit of a difference between the two, where you may have been in the Quonset hut in the 60s. It sounds like they actually danced in St. Francis prior to that. Go ahead, Bob.
If we went to Flamingo Hall, it was for the prom.
Oh, okay.
That was it. And we were formal. We wore those white Eisenhower jackets and white ducks, and it was very formal.
Okay.
That was it.
I think the audience is ready for a cool story. So Stafford, I about fell out of my chair when you and Plater told me this story. And I know the audience would love to hear it again. Is you were at the academy during World War II, and it's my
I was in Academy in World War II. War started in 41. I was in there in 43.
That's correct. And as a result, you and your fellow cadets were unable to march with the traditional Springfield rifles. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And why is that? Can you tell us?
Well, back then we had wooden guns to replace the real ones because we had them before the war, but they collected those, and because we were short of guns for the war, and so we had wooden ones that we used for until almost a year and a half until we were able to get more guns.
So
so
did they ultimately bring them back to you? You ultimately got your Springfields back at the conclusion of the war?
Oh yes, yes. We had our guns returned, and of course with the PMS&T, that's Professional Military Science and Tactics, the government issued So we had to they had to return our weapons to us, and in fact we had a hall under the gym where we used to train for the rifles and stuff. And in fact with the real gun, we could break them down and then put them back blindfolded, and so we were able to use our weapons then. And it's a different experience now, and I'm sure it was a different experience for the 50s and 60s people that I had in the 40s.
Yeah,
But my experience was always enjoyable experience from the school.
Stafford, as we
Well, it wasn't much different when I was there.
Oh, okay. Did you have wooden guns too, Pete, or did you have real rifles?
No, we had regular rifles, but the old rifle range down under the old gym and everything.
Right.
That was something else. I don't know when that building finally came down, but on the one side of the rifle range was the laundry, where the civilians would come in and do all of the laundry for us. And I'll never forget, as a freshman, Captain Johnson took us down there, small groups at a time. And all of a sudden I heard all of this profanity and looked around, and he said, "You hitting bullseye every time, fella." Well, a country boy, I had learned to shoot a long time ago. So that was that. And then when General Haas came in, he formed up a rifle team for shooting at the competition, and he made arrangements for cadets of the rifle team to fire real M1 rifles. Where is it? In Petersburg, Virginia. There's a military base there.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And he got it to the point that you got to fire a real military weapon that you drill with every day. Yeah, I'll never forget General Haas. He was a hell of a guy.
Right. Gentlemen, we're gonna wrap up here with two questions for each of you, and I'm gonna start with Stafford.
Well, let me say, yeah, I heard about him. We had Master Sergeant
McCurdy.
Robert McCurdy, and
yep.
These officers they come in later on with the generals and the captains and what have you. The people who do the training are the sergeants anyway. So McCurdy was able to really get down and relate to training more so than these officers. These officers rely on the sergeants to do the training. So
yep.
They had great training from on site, the officers. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Stafford,
okay.
This is a question I'm going to ask both of you. It seems that, and this will be the second to the last question before we conclude the podcast, but it seems that St. Emma profoundly affected almost all of its graduates in a positive way, and it seems to have influenced the way that they've conducted themselves as adults, professionally and personally. Would you agree, Stafford, that St. Emma had a very positive influence on you as a person, had impacted you profoundly enough to where you are thankful at the way and what they've taught you as to how you carried yourself through life?
Yes, I have great friends. In fact, one of my best friends just passed just 2 years ago, Irvin Rohn, and I was the best man at his wedding. So it had a great influence. But I would say this: it was an extension of what I had learned as a child coming up. It wasn't any change whatsoever. I had strict upbringing, and this was reinforced at the school. So it wasn't a big change, and I enjoyed that because it was what I expected. You do what you're told to do, like I told you before, and you'll be fine.
Right. And Pete, when you think of the discipline and you think of your experience there under Father O'Rourke, despite some of his shortcomings, do you think that your experience at St. Emma changed your trajectory in life for the better? And if so,
Oh, yes.
and how
Oh,
would you
yes.
to what would you attribute that?
Well, I had a few of my classmates, being in a small country town, and grade school, we were all together and everything. And my third year in St. Emma, I was working one weekend in my father's barber shop, and one of the fellows that I had gone to school with, his father approached me, and he told me, he said, "You are so much more mature than his son." And we pretty much grown up together. He said that school really shaped you. And when I went to Europe, I lived in Europe for 10 years, and that school also, because of the way it taught me how to act and behave, it helped me a lot. Okay?
Yeah.
And I will never forget that, and this is why if the mindset was there, I would say that school could help a lot of students today.
I would agree with that. Go ahead, Stafford.
Let me jump in and say one thing. When I came along in the 40s, a lot of the students came from professional families, because the parents didn't want them to walk to school. They were, doctors, and they had funeral homes and what have you, and they could afford to send their kids there. So, and back, they got them tired using used books that the white kids had, and so I think we were cherry picking. We got the best of the kids from the South, whether it be Mississippi, Louisiana, or whatever, because they had strict segregation in those communities. So therefore, they sent them to Rock Castle, and the northern kids had the freedom to do things that the southern kids couldn't, as far as they had bus services and whatever, and the black kids had to walk to the school, and it made a remarkable difference. So and they could afford to send their kids to a school.
Interesting. Okay. So, final question for both of you. I'm going to start with Pete, and I'm going to end with Stafford. As you guys know, it pains me to say this, but the school really isn't memorialized or commemorated with any sort of a marker or a plaque. I mean, obviously, those are some things we're trying to change. I mean, given the story behind the school and its historical relevance, there's a documentary in the making, in my opinion. But it just needs to be commemorated in the history books. And the beauty of this podcast is for all three of you guys that we're able to hear these stories, and in turn have your great grandchildren pull this up on YouTube on their telephone when they're teenagers and go, "Oh my gosh, this is what great grandpa went through." And this has just, continues to reinforce the legacy of the school, but there's clearly more that needs to be done. And I just like your opinions, starting with you, Pete, in a perfect world, what would you like seeing done to bring you closure for St. Emma to be memorialized?
I would like to see the United States Marines take over and use it as a training facility, a school, but to start grooming young men so that once they come out, they would be better prepared to deal with the world situations.
Wow.
I'll never forget the experience of meeting people from North Carolina, South Carolina, New York City, Pennsylvania, Detroit. I mean, just that commingling of individuals, it was such a blessing.
Wow, that's an interesting thought and thinking outside of the box. I appreciate your response. And the last question goes to Tolliver. I'll ask you the same thing, Mr. Tolliver. What do you think needs to be done in the perfect world?
Well, this is a different world, and I would. It's too bad the world is not different than it really is today. I can't see any change. I can't see where we're going in a place. It's a terrible situation now we're in. It's the whole thing that needs to be changed. I wish that we would have more St. Ambrose or something for the kids. But you have to remember that you go to the schools, it's not reform school. You don't go there to change those kids. You go there to extend their experience in life and stuff now. And we're not there to take a bad kid and all of a sudden overnight he's changed into a goody boy. So, but I do think that training starts at home at a very young age. And at 2 or 3 years old, the kids should be trained. Whatever they do, the kids should be trained at a very young age to do whatever their parents want them to do.
Yep. Well, understand that Bob and Eugene are doing what they can do here to make a dent in that and really get a couple material things done to change that. And all I can really say in conclusion is that we are so very grateful for you guys to have participated in this. Stafford, I know there's some talk of your daughter bringing you down to see what's left of the campus. I know that can't be easy, but I want to reiterate that the current owner has an open door policy for any alumnus that wants to come, as long as we have adequate notice to come visit. And same goes for you, Pete. If you ever want to come back to reminisce and see your alma mater, I know neither of you are terribly, terribly far away, so it would be great to spend some time with you. To that end, thank you both, Pete, Stafford, Bob. What a treat.
Yes,
I know
indeed.
they call these long-form podcasts for a reason. I have a feeling when the audience watches this one, they're going to watch it in pieces. So it's lengthy but necessary.
But we also want to thank you, John.
Okay.
For what you are doing, and you're the one that's getting us together and giving all of us this opportunity to speak about our schools and let the people know what's going on and what's happening,
Man,
So-
I'm passionate about it too.
Certainly
So
appreciate it.
happy to do it.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, God bless each and every one of you. Let's stay in touch, okay?
Yes, indeed.
Oh, we will.
Absolutely.
Okay, now.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Yeah,
all.
well, I appreciate
Bye-bye
the
now.
opportunity.
Okay, and that.
I also appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Stafford.
To say a few words.
Well, we appreciate you, and with those final words, that concludes this episode of the Time Capsule. Thank you, everybody. God bless.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Thank you for listening to The Time Capsule, Stories from an Abandoned and Forgotten America with John Plaschel. Future episodes can be found on John's website, www.johnplaschelphoto.com.